This learning session is created by the ISG training team and is intended for use by ISRs in Dell Medium Business. I wanted to do a little bit of Cable 101 with you for just a moment. So I want to start here in the lower left-hand corner. I've got this cable. This would be known typically as a Cat 5 or Cat 6 cable. That is Category 5 or Category 6. Category 7 is also available as I make this. Depends on the way the wires inside this cable are twisted and insulated. So you can see the head here. It has these little wires on the inside of it. They have to go in a very specific order. There's two possible combinations there. But the head at the end of this is called RJ45. Somebody might also refer to this type of cable as a Baset-T cable. Sometimes we'll just say copper cable. You'll notice this side is a little bit different, or this end is a little bit different from this end. This end is booted. That means if you were to unplug this and pull this to the rack, it probably does not take the head off of the cable quite as easily. Not so much with this type of cable. This is probably maybe a $4, $5, $6 cable. You could get this at most department stores. This can run speeds, if it's Cat 6, it could run speeds of 1 or 10 gig. I'm going to put this to the side over here. Let's go look at fiber cable now. Now, this cable, this is going to connect to fiber ends. This is called a direct attach cable. Actually, although I'm calling this a fiber cable, this will connect fiber ports, but this is actually a copper cable as well. Now with the copper cable, one thing about it is you could pinch it a little bit and it still is going to be a functional cable. It does not break or ruin the cable. But this direct attach cable probably, depending on the length, is roughly a $75 cable. The ends here, it has fiber optic ends fused to this cable at both ends, which it would need at both ends. But you would use this if you're connecting fiber ports with at a short distance in the rack. The maximum on this cable, the maximum length is usually around 7 meters. But again, depending on the length, you're looking at anywhere from $50 to maybe a couple $100. And make sure you get the right cable for the right job. It's not that one cable runs any speed, but you're probably looking at using a cable like this for anywhere from either 1 gig, 10 gig, or even 25 gig speeds. And I'm going to move this to the side just a little bit. Over here, we have a true fiber cable. Now, this one, whereas I was able to pinch this one, I don't have to worry, and I can pinch this, and I really don't have to worry about that breaking because it's copper, it's very flexible. You cannot do that with this fiber cable. Fiber cable, if you were to squeeze it too hard right here, you could break it. Fiber has glass on the inside. This cable is used to connect fiber ports at greater distances. So whereas the direct attach cable I just showed you right here is like a 7-meter connection roughly, this fiber cable could go anywhere from 300 meters to up to almost 150 kilometers. Now, some of that distance will depend on the optic that we use. This is known as a fiber optic. Some people would call it a transceiver. That's fine too. Some customers will refer to these as SFPs. I've heard Cisco people refer to it as a GBIC. But this cable, the cable at this end, this is your typical fiber cable. The signal is going in one and out the other. This is a pair of one-lane streets here, if you will. This end has to plug into this fiber optic to make it work. I'll see if I can get this plugged in, but it's a very specific way that it plugs, and once that plugs in, well, I'm probably not going to be able to do it with one hand. Once this plugs in, then it would plug into the same port used by this direct attach cable. So you can see how these two cables pretty much have the same end. Now, fiber cable, depending on the cable, there are different types. Most of what you see now is called OM3 or OM4. This is probably an optic that would let you run up to 300 meters, probably around $150, $200 for this optic. The optics that let you go further than that would probably be closer to $1,200, possibly $2,000 per optic. Remember that if they were to get fiber cable, your customer would need one of these for each end. This size also, again, this size supports 1 gig, 10 gig, and 25 gig speeds. This cable is probably several $100s by itself. Typically, when someone is buying fiber, the switch, if it's the same number of ports, exactly the same type of switch, the switch with fiber ports costs a little bit less than the switch with copper ports, by usually a few $100s. I'm just ballparking this here, but you will spend more for the cabling. So overall, fiber is going to cost a little bit more. So I really wouldn't do it, to repeat myself a little bit, unless a customer is going to connect buildings that are several hundred yards apart. That's where this makes the most sense. These will connect most switches and most servers. One other kind of cable I want to touch on, and this is a little bit of a different end here. We'll see these sometimes. This is a cable used to connect direct attached storage, sometimes a tape drive. This is two types of SAS cables here. The thinner, the flatter one, this is 6 gig SAS. This was used on a lot of the older devices. A lot of the tape drives now will still use these, but 6 gig SAS here. This cable is a little bit unusual. We don't see these a whole lot because you see 6 gig at one end and you see a 12 gig SAS connection at the other end. Now you can obviously see the difference between these two. Very different in shape, but also very different in performance. But most newer direct attached storage arrays will connect. If you hear like about a SAS connection, they'll connect using a cable with two ends like this. Hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please contact your ISG coaching team, and happy selling.